Well, we got a field. We got our 64. We've been waiting on this all year. We
Yeah.
got it. Christmas morning. So excited. It's and I guess my initial thought is, yeah, there are a few things I would probably tweak if it was Mark Etheridge universe, but I didn't find anything I'm really up in arms about. And that's kind of what we do. We react to this and find things that, oh, this is awful, or what are these crazy guys thinking? And I'm really having to struggle to
Yeah.
find that place to nitpick. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
kind of the same way. We've gotten to know JR Teagues really well over the last couple of years, and I'd love to give him a hard time about some picks here, but it's difficult to find them. Obviously, UConn was one of those teams I think we all three were very high on. But when you get down to those last few bubble teams, it's difficult to parse those teams out. So while they didn't get in, it's not like Arizona State or a team like that getting in, or Kentucky getting in some egregious decision. I mean, Kentucky won a series at Tennessee. They've got some high-end wins, high-end series wins, swept Oklahoma in Lexington. So it's not like they're, them getting in is like, wow, I can't believe they screwed UConn that bad. So overall, really good field, good slotting for the most part.
And to follow up on that, because again, like this is the one we missed in our final projection. We had UConn in, Kentucky out. But if the committee were, let's say, they had all of our stuff on a projection screen on Sunday morning, our most recent stuff at the time they made their selection, because they made their selection probably before our final projection, our second to last projection on Sunday morning had UConn lower on that ladder than Kentucky. And if you were to just slide down those teams on our ladder 2 spots to make up for the 2 teams that, got auto bids that we didn't have projected in, UConn would have been out. That's how close it was. I mean, that's, and again, we talked ourselves as we went back into it Sunday night, we talked ourselves back into UConn over a couple of those other teams like Miami based on the head to head. And we had them over Kentucky, but I mean, like that morning we didn't. So like, that's how close it is. I can't argue really with it. Like eventually we made the wrong call, but like we went back and forth in that ourselves. So I'm not going to skewer the committee over. It's just a matter of ultimately you got to pick somebody, and in this case, I don't think there was necessarily a wrong answer. I know that stings for the UConn people. I'm sure the Georgia Tech and TCU people feel burned because they didn't get the last post, and UCLA did. But I mean, this committee didn't do anything egregious. I mean, there were some seating things that I would quibble with, but this is not one of those years where I'm just really up in arms about anything. And that's really the first time probably since we've been doing this, 21 years now for me, that I felt this way, that I was like, hey, I mean, it's just a matter of taste when it came down to it. There was nothing that just felt egregious.
Yeah. Over the years, we've found things that really maybe distasteful is too strong a word, but we just didn't like. Okay. So like last year, it was whoever had representation broke every tie. Okay. We didn't really have that this year. Southern Miss did get a host, so you have a little bit of that. But the other tie there is Southern Miss went to TCU and won a series. And I think if TCU plays Ole Miss and loses instead of Southern Miss, they might be hosting this week. And I think that's how that tiebreaker came into play. I think the other thing, been a slave to RPI too often. I saw a little bit of that, but not anything. I mean, you look at some of the last teams in, you skip some RPI teams. You skip Xavier, you skip UConn, and took other teams. I think the other thing I would mention is Kentucky not being listed as one of the last 4.
Yeah.
That was a little bit jarring for me. I felt like they were the last team or one of the last teams in based on the conference record. But the other side of that is if you're watching the games, they were a couple of plays away from being in the host discussion. I mean, that's how close those margins are. And I know you got to win games, but there is nuance to this. It's not just looking at the data. There's also the human factor of being able to evaluate teams and strength. And Kentucky apparently passed that eye test.
Yeah. One thing I thought was really interesting. Go ahead, Aaron.
Just to follow up on that, I mean, in Kentucky, I think they probably it's really 2 really good series wins for them to stand out. It's at Tennessee and it's a sweep of Oklahoma, and that's certainly nice. And I mean, again, like if you look at UConn, it feels like maybe they didn't get the same level of. I mean, they're high end wins, right? Where I mean, it's one against Vanderbilt, one at North Carolina. I mean, those are two of the top
Yeah.
5 national seeds. Granted, just one win, but still. And then you've got the road series win at Miami that we've talked about, back in early March, which, I mean, I thought Jay made a pretty good defense on the television program when he was asked about UConn. He made a pretty good defense of why they didn't get in. I mean, they had that big long streak in the second half of the year, but it was against, teams that weren't rated as high, but they did have some wins early in the year before they really got hot that were against teams that were rated high. So, again, I thought UConn probably should have gotten in the end, but it was a tough one. It was really close.
Yeah, I do think strength of schedule played a factor. Who you beat, not just putting up a gaudy record. I do feel like this committee cared about it.
Yeah, one thing I thought stood out was Jay's comments when he was being interviewed on ESPN. They asked him, and Schick asked a really good question about Oregon State, losing all 4 games to Oregon and still being a top 8 and Oregon not. And I thought, Jay pretty much made the point that we were talking about last night on the Nerdcast, is that with Oregon dropping in the RPI, at that point you start comparing them to other teams other than Oregon. So I thought that was really interesting on Jay's part to bring that up, because that's precisely why we felt pretty confident in OSU in that 8 spot.
Yeah, I would agree there. And I think the Coastal falling in where they did, 13?
Yeah.
That was a bit
a little low for
jarring
me.
for me. Yeah, I felt like they had earned more than that. But again, I felt like that comes back to strength of schedule and how this committee viewed it. They just didn't have enough respect for the Sun Belt, who had 2 hosts, had a bubble team in Troy, and not a whole lot else.
Yeah.
And Coastal didn't even play Southern Miss until Sunday. So I feel like that hurt them in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, and still, I feel like if you're 48-11, a double champion in the Sun Belt, even if it is a lesser Sun Belt this year, but a double champion with a number 8 RPI. I mean, it feels like, again, it's like we wind up having them as the number 9 seed. 13 versus 9 is not a huge difference. It's really not a huge difference as far as the impact of it, but just the perception of it makes me think, oh, they were kind of light on Coastal, and that surprised me.
Yeah, I don't disagree there. I do feel like that. I was really curious to see how the larger conferences and unbalanced schedules would be evaluated. And that's something, certainly we asked Jay about when we spoke to him earlier. And that was one of the first buttons he pushed on his reaction interview that he had. And you look at it and you've got these monster conferences, and now schedule reveals when you get your conference schedule in the off season are going to become really important to how this goes. And granted, everybody's not going to finish the way you expect, but that played a huge role today for Georgia Tech, for Virginia, for Ole Miss, teams that didn't get the toughest SEC slates, and they were able to either take advantage of it or it worked against them based on in Auburn had the toughest strength of schedule, and they got the number 4 overall seed. Right. And I do feel like that played a huge role with this committee.
And it should, because it's part of, as part of your resume. And here's the thing is, like, it's not like Virginia and Georgia Tech got a raw deal. I mean, again, like it's a double-edged sword. If you have a harder schedule, that means harder to win those games. Like That's why Auburn, with a 17-14 aggregate SEC record is way up there, because it's hard to go 17-14 against the toughest SEC schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so, like, when those schedules come out, in the wintertime, you're like, oh man, we got all the easiest teams. Like, okay, well then go out there and beat the heck out of them. Put up a gaudy record. Like it's easier to do that if you have a friendlier schedule. So it's just logic, right?
Yeah. I think the other thing that struck me is we've realigned conferences. So the Pac-12 is no more. What happens? Okay. So last year the Pac-12 only had three bids, but typically it's more 5. And this year we had 5 of the former Pac-12 teams getting in. 3 of them hosted, and then you had the Arizona schools that also got in. So and they dispersed, and the ACC didn't get any extra, right? Their teams didn't help them this year, but the Big 12 it did. But they lost 2 to the SEC, and lo and behold, the SEC had 11 last year. They add 2 regional teams, and they get 13. And I can't help but wonder if A&M doesn't wet the bed against Mizzou.
Yeah.
Are we talking about 14 today?
Yeah. I think you're right. I think we probably are.
Probably so, considering their high-end series wins.
Yeah. Interesting that the Big 12 gets shut out of a host, but they also get, I think, 3 of the last 4 teams in the field were all Big 12 bubble teams. And maybe the committee was a little lower on Oklahoma State and Kansas State than we were in our final projection. I think we had those teams a little higher. Do we have either of those teams in our final 4? I can't remember. But anyway, they wound up having 3 teams at the end. And that kind of, for me, sums up a lot of the Big 12's situation this year. Is like you had a lot of good teams in the Big 12.
Right.
Like a number of those teams wound up kind of bubble teams that all got the benefit of the doubt, but they, as they should have. We had them all in. But also, I mean, just the teams at the top, I mean, the team that won the league wound up kind of, West Virginia kind of stumbled at the end of the year, and RPI, wasn't where it needed to be. Arizona had those bad series losses we talked about that kind of kept them from being where the RPI needed to be, and TCU finished 3rd. And so, like, it just is kind of a perfect storm for them to not get a host, but at least they were rewarded, I think, with the bubble teams getting the due that they deserved.
We've never had
Oklahoma
the
State
third-rated.
was one of our last 4 in.
It was okay.
Yeah, we've never had the 3rd-rated RPI conference get shut out from hosting. The Pac-12 in 2016 was 4th and didn't host. But so we made some history today with that call.
Mark, I think you for that decision though, you kind of go back to valuing the head-to-head. That's one thing that Jay said on the podcast with us a couple of weeks ago. And we believe Dean, but it's also one of those things where we're a little skeptical because a lot of times the committee will say that and then do the total opposite. But it does seem like head-to-head really did matter when it comes to these most important decisions.
And that's one where, Mark, you mentioned it, like looking for places where committee members might have, had an advantage or whatever. Yeah, I mean, Southern Miss had an AD in the committee, but I mean, we all thought that Southern Miss was, if anything, a little lower seated than we had them. We had them a couple spots higher than this committee did. I don't think there was anything untoward. I think they were justifiably rewarded for the season that they had as a host.
Well, certainly they finished so strong.
Yep.
And granted, it is easier to finish strong when you're facing Sun Belt versus some of these, maybe even Big 12, right? But the difference with Southern Miss is when it came down and they're trying to decide and wrestle with those last couple of teams, they had an actual head-to-head on the road at one of the other contenders.
Yep, on the road too. That's the thing. It's not like it was at home. You put a little less stock in it, but on the road, even though it was earlier in the year, that's a good tiebreaker right there.
Yeah. So what else? Virginia, 5 games over 500 in the conference. Had the missing series at Florida State, but an absolutely awful non-conference schedule and the easiest of all of the ACC conference schedules. That's why the RPI is where it is, and that's why they're sitting at home.
Yeah, and I brought this up on one of our shows down the stretch, looking at their non-conference. Like I was kind of baffled why it's rated as poorly. Like it seems like the intent to schedule was pretty good here. I mean, they go to the Puerto Rico Challenge. I know Villanova and Rice. Okay, like those aren't great teams to draw down there, but you're going out on the road. Playing Michigan. I mean, opening day. The next week they're in Round Rock. Playing Oregon State and Oklahoma. Like those first 2 weeks are better than their historical first 2 weeks are. Yeah, they had Dartmouth at home after that, and that's that weekend hurt them a lot, I'm sure. But and then some good midweek stuff there with Liberties and Richmonds and Maryland's. Like it's just weird to me that non-conference is so low. But I mean, it is what it is. The numbers added up to what they added up to.
It's the 16th toughest, which is last in both conference and in non-conference, which is that's a double dip. That's hard to do.
Yeah. And there's also a few stinkers in the midweek. Like, you play Georgetown, who has a down year, 16-40. You play a VCU or a Towson. I mean, you have to play the teams in your area to some degree. And some of those teams didn't have great years. So those are all things that kind of added up to that stew of them being a little lower in the RPI.
The perfect storm. Yeah.
And of course the Florida State series. But as you've pointed out, Mark, I mean, even if they had played the Florida State series, and if you assume a 1-2 record down there, which, I think it's a slippery slope as far as assuming how a team would do in any, but like the most likely outcome we think would have been probably they go on there, they win 1 out of 3. That would have raised their RPI probably, 8 or 9 spots into the mid 50s.
Right.
Still probably not enough
light.
For an ACC team historically.
Right. I would agree there. So I guess the next thing to think about is what did we learn this year, and what would we like to see carry over, right? What are our lessons learned, right, from this whole process, and what would we like to see? I think adding the DSR. I'll start with this
Yeah.
next year. Having that third metric to go with RPI and KPI. So when you have these outliers, or we all look at it and we go, that the RPI says they're 28, but they don't seem like the 28 team. They seem like the 15th, or they seem like the 48th. Having that other metric to balance it, and maybe you take an aggregate, or you or two are really close, you kick out the third one, something like that. I think that's the logical next step. But are there other things that you guys would be interested in adding to this casserole?
For me, I think part of it is, and this year this wasn't as much of a factor, but I still think there's a problem with having people making these decisions who have a vested interest in the outcome. And again, I don't know what the answer is, like who should be the people that determine the field, but I don't think it should be someone who works for one of the universities.
But look at football. I mean, that's the model that we do in college, and I don't really understand why. Historically it's always been member institutions, and we're going to make the decisions, and we're going to hold ourselves to this impeccable standard. But we're all human. We all grew up somewhere. We all either work somewhere or have friends somewhere. There's going to be even inherent biases that you don't realize when you introduce yourself into this process.
But it's different to have an actual professional allegiance to, like,
who could get a bonus based on this.
Right. I mean, it's true. Yeah, like, I grew up in central Massachusetts, and I like Holy Cross, and I make jokes about how that, but like, if it comes down to it, if they get in or not, it doesn't actually affect me, right? But like, if I'm the Holy Cross AD, it does have an effect. It is just plain different. It's one thing to have some built-in background. It's another thing to actually work for an institution that is on the line.
Totally.
Yeah, I guarantee you there's someone in Hammond that will give JRTs a hard time over them being one of the first four teams out of the field, even though it's totally justified.
Yeah, I mean, you can make a case they shouldn't have been one of that next four.
Yeah.
I mean, there were certainly other candidates that had cases.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing I would like to see from the committee, and the basketball committee has started doing this, is doing like periodic seating updates.
Yeah.
The basketball committee, I want to say, does it like 3 times maybe before the final selection show. They do like a seedings update. I just think the more transparency, the better. And obviously, Jay was a big step forward this year, reaching out to us and offering to come on a podcast and talk about the selection process. But I think even more transparency just helps the process and helps the trust in the process, I feel like.
Yeah, totally agree. And there's even been some chatter about, in college football, they have the mock selection where they bring in media people and they take you through the process and understand, to give you more transparency, and maybe that's something that could be introduced for baseball as well.
Yeah. But yeah, I think overall, Mark, I think we all agree that this committee did a very good job, and that there is progress being made as far as introducing other metrics. First KPI, then sounds like DSR has a lot of momentum. Those are positive things. I think the process is improving, yeah, I mean, I wish I had something to rant about. I feel like the show's a lot more fun when
I know you put your knob back in your sheath.
One thing I will say, and we can kind of segue over to like actual regionals a little bit here, but one regional that kind of stood out to me was Oxford. We talked, we were talking, offline after they announced the selections, just about the different regionals. And I was just looking it up, but Oxford, guys, has Ole Miss's offense, the 45th ranked offense in Murray State, the 14th ranked offense in Western Kentucky, and the 13th ranked offense in Georgia Tech.
Oof.
If you like long balls and beer showers, Oxford is the place for you next weekend.
Warm weather, big crowds. That is going to be one heck of a fan experience.
Yeah, and you would think that Ole Miss is probably going to have to throw Hunter Elliott against the Racers in that game.
It's a risk if they don't.
Yeah, yep. I'm sure Ole Miss fans would take it very well if they threw off and somehow lost to Murray State. They would take it great, I'm sure.
Well, it's
any
the
other regionals,
question, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's the age-old question: can you win enough with offense? Because you have a really good offense. Can you win enough at home to win that 1-4 game and save your ace for that for a potential showdown with Georgia Tech, assuming they advance? Or do you just,
Yeah.
hey, we're going to go best on best and then let it play out like it would in a series?
Yeah, one other thing I thought stood out to me was congratulations to Arkansas for being the 3 seed. If everything goes chalk, you get to play Tennessee again.
balls.
And from watching that series when they played in Fayetteville a few weeks ago, I mean, that could have gone either way. Like
Oh,
it was an
yeah.
incredibly hard fought series. So not really like much of a gift for the number 3 overall national seed to have to draw the defending national champions who, again, we talked about this last night. They're playing their best brand of baseball. They are a top 5 team.
Yeah, and Arkansas, who has not enjoyed the greatest postseason at home the last few outings, and you're going to get the reigning national champions who are as talented as anybody in the country.
Yeah, I think there's some really neat potential super regional matchups. Just looking at the top seeds, if they were to play, I mean, I think North Carolina, Oregon is kind of sneakily intriguing. I think LSU, Clemson is fun.
Oh yeah,
Oregon State, Florida State is fun. Auburn Coastal. I mean, I think really all of them.
Or Auburn, Florida.
Is fun. Auburn, Florida. Yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
That goes that way. I mean, here's another thing. Just going through these pairings. I don't think there's like a regional of death. There's none that I'm like, oh, this is crazy. Like they went overboard. This is unbalanced. I mean, like, I don't think any of the teams are really improperly seeded. Do you guys? I mean, as far as maybe Louisville, we had as a 3, but it was like back to back with them in Cincinnati in the RPI. Yeah. You can make we had Cincinnati as a 2, Louisville's a 3, but you could very easily go the other way.
Yeah. And, Columbia getting a 4, maybe Rhode Island as a 3 in hindsight, basically based on the RPIs are maybe we should have flipped those. The committee did the same thing we did. Columbia is a really tough 4 for Southern Miss. Do they throw Middleton to make sure that they advance? I think that might be the most balanced regional in Hattiesburg with Alabama, Miami, Columbia joining the Golden Eagles. That's a tough one.
Yeah. Baton Rouge is the only one that I look at. I'm just like, like that seems a little bit like a cakewalk. I think Dallas Baptist is good. I don't think they're beating LSU at the box.
Yeah, LSU got an easy 3 and an easy 4, relatively speaking.
Yeah, and I do again like Dallas Baptist, but I don't think this is one of DBU's like best vintage clubs either. I think it's a good club, but like not even one of the. For me, it doesn't feel like one of the most dangerous DBU clubs. So I would tend to agree. I think that's a favorable draw for LSU. I'm probably, in fact, definitely heading to Conway this weekend, which I think that's a spicy meatball right there.
Yeah.
Well, I heard a rumor that Cliff Godwin and Kevin O'Sullivan do a bench press competition before their game.
I'll be there for that.
Yeah.
Aaron's gonna participate too.
Yeah.
I don't like your chances.
I could probably do the bar.
But if it's a different kind of bar, you're in good shape.
Hey, absolutely. I'm here for
I know about that.
Coastal Carolina, Florida, East Carolina, and Fairfield. I think that is and Fairfield is sneaky too. I mean, I think that's a good one. So excited to be there. Kendall, you're probably heading to Austin. UTSA, very good club. Kansas State, we've seen what they can do when they're playing their best.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, people are going to look at that regional right off the bat and go, oh, that's incredibly easy. But Kansas State, I do feel like they're one of those teams. And you saw them earlier this year against LSU. I mean, they were a missed tag at home plate away from beating LSU in Frisco. This is a team that, again, I feel like we say this about a lot of these teams, but they're one of those clubs that when they're playing their best, I mean, they're a super regional caliber club. And UTSA, one of the best stories in college baseball this year, Pat Hallmark just working that magic yet again. Mason Lytle's one of the bigger bats in college baseball. James Tausig, a really talented offensive player too. So UTSA can really hit. They've beaten Texas before this year. Granted, it was a midweek game, but they've beaten Texas. And I personally, I don't choose teams I want to. I'm not rooting for teams here, but I kind of like the idea of Texas or Ruger Riojas going against his old team, UTSA. In a Saturday winners bracket game, that just seems rather juicy. Think UTSA would like to beat Ruger?
Yeah, pull for the story. That's the old sports writer mantra, right?
Yeah.
Here's a spicy one here. Northeastern, the nation's longest winning streak, getting a shot at Hail State. You get the mighty SEC program that comes in with the huge fan base, and then the winner gets Florida State. I mean, I like that. The potential for some fireworks there.
I will say this too, Mark. I think it's important for some of these mid-majors that are in similar positions as Northeastern moving forward for Northeastern to be competitive next weekend. Like, I think if a team like Northeastern, who, they played a couple of midweek games at Kansas State, but if you look at their weekend series, their conference wasn't good. Their non-conference weekends weren't anything special. And I think, it's impressive they put together that record. But I think if they went to Tallahassee, and let's just say, I don't think this is going to happen, but let's just say they just got pushed around all over the place. I think future committees can look at that and look at a team with a record like that in a conference like that maybe a little differently.
Yeah. Well, certainly it speaks to credibility, right? Because it's so tough to do this evaluation when you have, these power conference teams that have all these opportunities, and then a team like a Northeastern who really doesn't, and they have to make the most of the few they have. And if those don't go well, it can really hurt you.
Yeah,
Aaron, you've seen Northeastern this year, right?
I saw them in the fall. I missed them in the.
Okay.
We have covered them.
How do you think they match up with a team like Mississippi State?
I think they're really good. And listen, they haven't. I mean, again, I know they've played who they've played, but they haven't lost a baseball game since April 6th.
Yeah, that's tough.
Hard
I mean, and on top of that, I mean, yes, I know they're non-conference. Like, it was a pretty good intent to schedule at Charlotte versus Indiana State in a neutral site in Florida, at Hawaii, at San Diego State. But also, you'll notice one thing about that: you're going to Charlotte. You're going to Florida, you're going to Hawaii, you're going to San Diego State. You don't play your first home game till March 14th. Like, you're all the heck over the place. Hard to do what they've done is all I'm saying. But they are talented. They're physical. They have a really good pitching staff. I mean, we talk a lot about Coastal Carolina's pitching staff being something that separates them. Northeastern as well. It's a really good bullpen. I mean, the rotation guys, like it's one of the better pitching staffs out there. And do they have the physicality to go in there and hold their own in an offensive yard? Yeah. I mean, you got three guys: Harrison Feinberg, Cam Maldonado, Jack Goodman, and all have hit home runs. And certainly Alex Lane has hit a ton in his career. He's had a down year, but they have some guys that can beat you. And we know they're going to put a ton of pressure on you with their speed. I mean, just look at their stolen base totals this year. It's bonkers. So they're good.
Yeah. I think one of the other things is the SEC, ACC battles that you're going to potentially have in regional finals. If the chalk holes, I mean, you can have Vanderbilt, Louisville, you can have Auburn, NC State, you can have North Carolina, Oklahoma, Georgia and Duke, Ole Miss, Georgia Tech. You could even have Kentucky and Clemson if Kentucky gets past West Virginia. Tennessee, Wake. I mean, there's a lot. Granted, a lot of that's geography, but those have been the two best conferences, and they're going to get a chance to duke it out a little bit. So that's all.
Yeah. Something else I was going to point out. Congratulations to USC. This is a program that has not been in the NCAA tournament for 10 years. Wow. They were close last year. They took a big step forward last year, but we've talked about this on the podcast before. I mean, that's an elite staff when you think of Andy Stankiewicz, Travis Jewett, Andy Jenkins, Sean Allen. I mean, you've got I don't know if Jewett won our assistant coach of the year a long time ago, but Sean Allen has. It's a really good staff, and they could be a dangerous team in that Corvallis regional with Caden Aoki and Caden Hunter.
And Andy Jenkins, of course, played for the Beavers. He was there. I think he was on the team, and I think it was 2005 when they played USC in a super, if I'm not mistaken. Gosh, players together. But
back in the Ian Kennedy days.
Ian Kennedy versus Dallas Buck, I recall being a big marquee matchup there. So that's fun. That's a neat storyline there. Hey, how about this from our guy Pat? We got some Pat stats for you. As we all know, SEC 13 selections is the most from a single conference. But also, it's the first time we've had the top 4 national seeds all from one conference. It kind of feels like a little softballish, the way things are going.
And 6 of the top 8.
And 6 of the top 8 is mucho. And then it's also apparently just the second time. I'm actually surprised by this when you think about all the great teams Vanderbilt has had. Is this true? Just the second time in program history, Vanderbilt has been the number 1 overall seed. They weren't in 19.
Yeah, and they don't want to remember.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I was there for that one. Allen Oaks, man, the Allen Oaks party.
That's right. Iconic.
I will say this: I thought North Carolina would have definitely been ahead of Auburn for me. I think if anybody would have watched North Carolina over the last week, I mean, hell, they look like a top 2 team to me.
Mm-hmm. Would agree there. I got a fun one for you. Give me a 3 seed that can win a regional.
Ooh.
That is a fun one.
We usually get one. Sometimes we get 2.
Trying to find the bracket. Got too many tabs open, guys.
Well, I'll go while you guys
A 3
look.
seed.
I like how Oklahoma State has finished the year. They're in Athens as a 3 seed. That's certainly a talented team we had. We thought highly of heading into the year. I get it. Georgia is really good at home, but that would be one I would watch, because if that ballpark plays tiny and Oak State can swing it, so I do feel like that would be an opportunity for an upset.
Sure. I think Mississippi State is dangerous.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. I'm trying to think of something that
wasn't obvious.
Yeah.
I'll throw Cal Poly out there, and I don't think they're going to win that regional, because I think Oregon is really good and Arizona is also really good. But Cal Poly now, it's like one of those teams that's just, they've been having to scrap and claw to find their way in, and it's probably cathartic now that they've done it. It felt like it had been trending away from them, and they find a way. And maybe they're freed up. I think they're good. I think they're a good balanced club that could go up there and make some noise in Eugene.
This might surprise you guys a little bit. I'm going to go with Kentucky, and here's why. Like, Kentucky's been there before. This coaching staff knows how to win in the postseason, and Kentucky is a very unique look. Like, they are willing to do a lot of things differently, and our teams like West Virginia and Clemson ready for that, because it's not your usual look. And so I'll go with Kentucky.
Yeah. They're excuse me, they're definitely an acquired taste to compete against.
Yeah, it's different. They're going to do silly things. They're going to try to steal home.
Yeah.
Like in a random time that you would never expect it.
Yeah.
I think Stetson might be sneaky dangerous too. I'll give you one more there. I like that club. Really good, pitching and defense club. It's not the same kind of style of play as Auburn, but then again, it's also not like the most offensive NC State team ever. So like, I feel like that certainly is an offensive yard, but these teams, we'll see how they do down there. That'll be interesting.
A 4 who can make a regional final. I'm not going to ask for Evansville again, because that's probably not going to happen, but we usually get 1 or 2.
Missouri State has been mentioned. That one jumps out to me.
Columbia would be one.
Yep.
Aaron's going with Holy Cross without a doubt.
Certainly the Crusaders. Don't you dare sleep on the Satyrs.
I watched St. Mary's the other day. They're actually a pretty good club.
Yep.
Yeah.
Always dangerous.
I would say for me, boy, this one's that's a tough question. I'm going to go with, I just don't think Columbia.
This is good television right now.
Yeah, I don't think Columbia is beating Matt Adams or JB Middleton.
Probably not. But I didn't expect Evansville to come out of that regional death last year.
Yeah, good point.
I'll go with St. Mary's. I'll go with St. Mary's.
Okay. Well, Miami, Ohio, keep an eye on them. I mean, again, that's this is one of the reasons why, again, I think the committee did a good job, because I'm looking around and I'm like, oh, there's a lot of good, balanced, intriguing regionals. There's not really any.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a lot of snoozers, and like that one, Knoxville is fun. Like Wake in Tennessee, given the Chase Burns history, and just I think Wake's style of play translates well there. It's a power hitting team, and then you got Cincinnati, who's just like the kind of more the Kentucky speed style. We saw Kentucky give Tennessee trouble with the running game, when they played in Knoxville, and then you got Miami, Ohio, who I think is this dangerous 4, a good club there. So I feel like I'm going through these. I'm seeing a lot of things like that where I'm kind of like, oh, I kind of would like to go here. I'd like to go here. It's gonna be fun this year.
Yeah.
I really believe that. I think things are pretty wide open.
Yeah.
We could have
Kentucky's intriguing.
We could have a lot of upsets this year. I just have a feeling that this is one of those years, because and maybe not. Maybe it's chalk. Who knows? But it feels like this year there hasn't been a lot of separation all year long. We've been waiting for elite teams to emerge. It feels like everybody is vulnerable. But that also means, the lesser teams are clearly vulnerable too. So somebody's got to make a run. But I'd be surprised that we have like 11 1 seeds advancing.
One of the other storylines to think about is with Tennessee. We talked about how talented they were. They played well in Hoover, but they still kick the ball around defensively. They still have some things that in order for them to get where they want to be, they got to clean up. And what are they going to do after Phillips and Doyle on the mound? Is it Arvidsson? Is it Coons? Who is it, right? What does that look like? And the other part of this is they've lost 4 SEC series in a row. Okay. So we all thought, well, they'd be better if they hit the road. Well, they get to host because they played well in Hoover. And now what does that look like? Because when that place is going, that's as good a home field advantage as there is, but it has not transferred to wins this year. So what is the postseason? It's a reset. That's just kind of what Tony talked about in Hoover. Getting to come there is just a chance to start over. It's a fresh look. Now you get to do that again for the postseason. Start over. It's not a series. It's individual single games. What does this look like for them? Which version of the balls do we see? Do we see the one that we thought was the best team in the country about 6 weeks ago? Yeah. Or the one that we didn't even have. Well, they were like 21-22 in our hosting discussion, a few days ago. So where are they?
It's shocking that they've lost 4 series at home this year.
Yeah.
I know, again, you're playing good teams, Vandy, Auburn, but 2 of them are against Kentucky and A&M, which aren't, those are talented teams, but not elite teams. So anyway, that's just a wild thing. How about this, guys? If you're looking for other dangerous teams, take a look at the DSR. DSR has been a pretty good predictive tool. USC Upstate is the highest ranked 4 seed at number 54, and Murray State is right behind him at 55. So
that's good
Upstate, will be right next door in Clemson. It's a short bus ride for those guys. I'm sure that Spartan Nation is gonna show up in big numbers there. I hope so. Come on, Spartan Nation.
I mean, it is awesome for programs that don't get to go to regionals that often when it's close by and your fans can go. Isn't that a cool deal?
Absolutely.
What else we got, guys?
We're just looking around.
I'm running out of takes. A quick pour one out for Troy and Xavier as well. We talked about Virginia. We have talked about Notre Dame. Troy, I mean, this team was preseason top 25, and they stayed in the top 25 for 13 weeks, all the way until they got the final week. They lost to Southern Miss, but again, they couldn't sweep enough teams, and so they finished 8 games out of first and 6 games out of second. And so that kind of stands out. The RPI kind of sagged, and they had the one high-end series win against Coastal, couldn't get it done against Southern Miss at home. Like, win one game there, and I feel like you probably get in, but getting swept there.
Yeah, a good team that was just a game or 2 short.
Yeah,
and I think the other part of this, and it didn't just affect them, but with Nebraska making the run. And with East Carolina stealing a bid, and then not just those 2, but with Western Kentucky and Cal Poly, if they go out early in their conference tournaments, they're not in the field, and that opens up spots for someone else, which might have been Troy.
Yeah, and as it played out, once they got to the conference finals, maybe they still get a bid, as an at-large team, but even that wouldn't have been a guarantee. But I mean, it's like, at least I like when you have bubble teams that play their way from just outside the cut line, and then actually go on and win an automatic bid. Like that, you guys deserve it. That's nothing stolen about those.
And that's what we want, right? We want you to be playing your best ball going into the postseason, and just take all the doubt away from the committee, take it out of their hands, and hey, we're just gonna knock this door down.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else, KR?
No, I was looking back at Troy's resume, and one thing that stood out to me is the fact they finished 6 games behind Southern Miss out of second place. Yeah. In a weak year for that league, that's just brutal.
3-10 Q1, and they just their pitching just kind of let them down at the end of the year. They just weren't healthy enough, and they couldn't overcome it.
Yeah. I guess the other thing that's kind of intriguing to me is the Big 12 has at times, with Kansas State and TCU being kind of a thorn in Arkansas' side, can Don Bagley and Kansas kind of be that next Big 12 team to do that to Arkansas and Fayetteville? That'll be really interesting with, Dan Fitzgerald coming off that Coach of the Year award, taking that team down to Fayetteville.
How about that coaching job? I mean, really remarkable what they've been able
Very
to do
difficult
with Kansas. It's crazy. It's for them to be 43-15, 20-10 in the Big 12 and a 2 seed in a regional. I mean, this program they've had some years where they've gotten into regionals, but they've never had a season. It's in the last 2 decades I can remember as good as this. It's very impressive.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my final thoughts on this, and then we can wrap. Is
sure.
We've had all year, or teams had all year to make their cases, and then it comes down to just who gets. The margins are so small of who hosted. Ole Miss, Tennessee make a run, and you push out a couple of teams. You have the bubble teams that we just talked about, and it's just I guess reflects just how close things are in this sport, and as a result, you're going to have either programs make their first appearance or first appearance in a while, or you might have the other side where coaches lose their jobs, and it's all these margins are so tiny, and that to me is part of the sport and part of why we love it, because the stakes are so high, but it also just goes to show you really need some luck to advance when you don't just go ahead and have that slam dunk case. And I feel like that's what we're seeing for a lot of these teams, and why they're dismal today when they didn't get the nod.
I saw the tweet from the Big East commissioner, complete and utter trash emoji.
Oh, really?
It just came across, which, hey, I get it. Big East, Rod. I mean, tough day for the Big East. It is. I would have liked to have seen one more team get in. I think we all thought 3 bids was probably a stretch, but either UConn or Xavier. I mean, for us, it was UConn, but Xavier also had a case. They were both right there on the line, and they went against them both. And so I feel bad for them. And hey, people are going to say, how about we try to grow the game, etc. Don't just put all the SEC teams in. Like, you got a really worthy, 2 really worthy candidates right there next to Kentucky, and neither of them got the nod. I get it, but
and that's why I'm on team play in. To follow it like basketball does, and let's have either 4 or 8 more, and have those games the Thursday before on the regional field. They'll have everything to themselves. There'll be great showcases for those particular games. And like this year, you could have had a Virginia, Texas A&M match up, something like that would have really resonated with the public and built some excitement as we headed in to the rest of the regionals. Sign me up for that. It would not extend the season anymore. Doesn't have any calendar impact. All it is travel for those additional teams.
Yeah. And at this point, I'm with you. I mean, like, I still ultimately in a dream world, I'm with Coach Rooney. I would like to see 32 hosts, best of 3 series, maybe add an extra week. I get it. Barring that, I certainly think we should expand the field. I think it's time for that. Basketball has done it. Baseball should do it as well. We've got 307 teams, 64 making it is not very many.
Yeah.
Before we wrap here, make sure everyone checks out the bracket challenge, which I believe is now live on the site. Is it not, Kendall?
If it's not, it will be very shortly.
Is that a Soldier Sports production, I believe, this year?
Yeah,
so thanks to those guys.
You get awards. I think the awards this year, we have some awards from Chinook Cedary, Tecovas Boots, Wilson, and of course Soldier Sports. So a lot of goodies if you're lucky enough to win the bracket challenge this year.
And you can create your own group and invite your friends. We improved that process last year, so you can just send the URL. You don't have to get their email addresses. You can create your own custom groups, and win every pool. That's my motto. Win every podcast. These people want to win every pool.
And the other thing I would say too, we'll have a lot of staffers on the road next weekend covering regionals. We had I think 10 conference tournaments that we covered to some degree this past weekend from our writers on the road. So, I think we have we have several thousand people watching this. You can use the code Omaha30 to get 30% off an annual subscription. We'll have, we'll probably at least have 7 or 8 regionals, if not more, covered this coming weekend, transfer tracker, coaching scoop coming. You know, I love that. And, you know, we're looking forward to the postseason here.
So many good things going on here, D1, man. It's a great time.
Mark, thanks for another awesome year of nerdcasting. Nerdmaster General, you are truly
Pleasure.
a living legend, best in the business. Thanks for all you do for the game. Kendall, an absolute delight all spring long. Thanks to all of our loyal viewers and listeners, because this show has really grown, you know, over the last 10 years. People love the Nerdcast. And I think all you people are a bunch of weird nerds. If you want to sit here and watch us nerd out, but we love you for it. We love you for it.
I did ask a friend of mine one time, like, are you really that bored? But, you know, people love it, you know, and you know, we put a lot of thought into it. You know, I think on average, we spend about an hour and a half going through the field each week. And, you know, that's how important it is to us to, at least in our eyes, get the field right each week as we do projections.
Some of us spend more than that.
Yeah, that's true.
That's very true. Mark's
that's why you're the Nerdmaster General.
It's got to prepare. He spends hours preparing for every show.
But yeah, another great year. Can't wait for the games Friday. And with that, go see a game this weekend, folks.
Yep. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.